Sports fans, get ready for Sportz-USA. Get sports from a personal point of view from seasoned professionals who've reported and lived the stories. Now let's go to the crew high atop the Sportz-USA press box. Hello, everybody. This is John Askins, and welcome to another podcast of Sportz-USA.com. And joining us with us, we got a pretty full crew today. From Grand Junction, Colorado, John Kearns. From College Station, Texas, and the suburban area, Tom Russo. I'm in Houston. Kevin Long is in Dallas. So is Bo Carter. And our West Coast correspondent today is Mark John. We've got a bunch of stuff that's happening around the world of sports. Let's start with baseball. Bo, catch us up on college baseball. And boy, you picked it last week. UTSA was your pick as one of the surprise teams in the country, and all they did was come down to the Houston College Classic and go 3-0 along with Texas.
Yeah, they're becoming the new powerhouse in the state of Texas, and we finally, I think, have of the three major polls have a consensus of number one. The writers had LSU for the first 3 weeks, and the D1 in Baseball America had UCLA, and then UCLA on the verge sweeping the Amagi Bank series against Mississippi State, Tennessee, and Virginia Tech last week. Jumped on up to number one with although they lost to San Diego State earlier last week. So right now, I think there are only 3 undefeated teams in Division I baseball. So the that 59-0 record by LSU Shreveport, I guess, will still stand for all divisions.
Well, and John Kearns is an athlete that is in a special spot up in Grand Junction. Tell us a little bit about how the city just revolves around the Junior College World Series as it comes up in the spring.
Well, the city of Grand Junction it's one of the major events of the year. The city rallies around it. They sponsor, community members through the team members as they come in. They spent millions of dollars upgrading the facility. It is the major event here in Grand Junction. Next to mountain biking. I have to say mountain biking is pretty big here too. But the Junior College World Series has become kind of a stepping stone for a lot of the young players making that jump on up to Division I. So it's a showcase.
And a lot of those players go 2 years in JC, and then they sign their pro contracts.
Yeah, and that's one of the things I think there's a sweet spot for them is it makes it easier for them to make that jump without having to set in one more year. And I don't know, it's an extremely fun to watch. It's a different level, but at the same time, you get to see some really outstanding players. So it's something that people around here really, really enjoy and get into.
Well, we'll keep an eye on that as the season progresses. Bo, let's talk about you've written several books about baseball. One I remember was a great book about Dizzy Dean.
Yeah, thanks for mentioning. In fact, I've got about 400 copies in storage. If you know anybody wants to buy.
What's the name of it here?
Send the check. We never got the money order thing. No, it was a great short story about that. Gene Kirby, who remember the little short guy, those of us that watched those CBS games the little short guy with glasses, there was a producer who had to stand in for Dizzy Dean when he'd been out on a bender or playing 9 holes of golf and couldn't get off the course for a Saturday game. Gene produced those games for about 12 years, also did the St. Louis Hawks of the old NBA and Army West Point football. But in 1968, he started doing a memoir on Dizzy Dean, and we finally got it published in 2016. So it's been a great book, very wonderful. They got a ton of photos from the Dean collection, Dizzy Dean's widow, and Major League Baseball. It's a fun book to read, good coffee table book for those who'd like to pick
quite
one
a
up.
Colorful character.
Yeah,
that's right.
I guess that's I'll tie this in. When I was very young, Houston was trying to get into the Major League level, but their minor league team was the Houston Buffs.
Yes.
And Dizzy Dean played here while he was with the Buffs. Now, I didn't see Dizzy Dean. He was broadcasting by the time I was conscious, but I had the fortune of going out to the original Buff Stadium with my brother and my dad, and then we switched over to the Colt Stadium, which was the initial stadium for 3 years for the major league team in Houston called the Colt 45.
Colt 45. Yeah.
And I've got a great memory of a Colt Stadium. I'll put some pictures up during our podcast here, but it was a open air, obviously, stadium, hot as blazes. The mosquitoes were the size of B-52s. But I remember sitting in the right field stands, and the center field area was this huge wagon gate area, and on the left and right side of the dead center field were the scoreboards. So in dead center field, there was this huge wagon gate that would open, and the players would come and go from the dressing room through the center field stands. Now, as a kid, I figured out that if you went down the stairs to center field before, I'd say like the bottom of the seventh inning, you could get down there, and then they would close the access to the stands about 2 innings before the game concluded. But if you got down there early enough, all the players came running through, and you could get all kinds of autographs. So I remember that was the first autograph that I ever got for a major league player. I think one was Carl Warwick, who we knew through the Houston Sports Association, and Hal Woodashek, and that's just a great memory. Kevin, do you have any kind of baseball memories at all?
Well, Bobby Richardson was my first autograph. How about that?
Wow. Sweet.
Yeah,
Still
and you
living.
threw in a Mel Allen reference there. I like that.
Right.
How about that?
How about that? Did you grow up on Long Island as a Yankees fan, or what?
I really rooted for the Yankees and the Mets. I liked them both. I didn't have any problem with one winning, the other losing. I mean, I just, because I know, like, I've seen Chicago White Sox fans who just despise the Cubs, and I was never like that.
You like them both, huh?
I rooted for the Yankees and the Mets.
John, I wanted to go back to something that you were talking about, Old Colt Stadium. And now I wasn't around. I wasn't conscious, as you say, at that point in time. But I certainly have read about the players wore those old flannel uniforms back then. They weren't the nice breathable uniforms.
No.
And in the heat of the Texas summer, I can't imagine what those players went through down there.
Well, I can't imagine what I went through as a fan in the stands, but that's back in a generation where we really, before Houston was air conditioned, that all happened during my lifetime in the late 50s. When I grew up, all of our houses in the suburbs, we had ceiling fans, not the kind that you see now, but the huge fans that suck the air into the attic and out that way.
Right.
And it wasn't until the late 50s and early 60s that everybody started buying those huge window units. As a matter of fact, I think the person that invented air conditioning was from Houston, and I believe it was Frederick, was the name.
Or Carrier.
But you had a bunch of different brand names, but I remember that's the
I thought
first
it was a
air
guy named
conditioning.
Carrier. Maybe I'm wrong.
Oh, it was Carrier, Frederick, one of those brand name guys. But first we went to the window units, and then later the central air and central heat. But I don't want to lose my train of thought on baseball. John, Coach K, tell us a little bit about your experience as a high school player coming out of high school and being drafted by the Dodgers.
Well, it was quite an experience all the way through. I mean, the scouting process started in my junior year, made contact with the Dodgers, primarily the Dodgers, and John Keenan was the scout that was in our area, and he was the guy that I had almost contact with. I got drafted in the initial draft of the amateur baseball draft in 1965. I was the 363rd player selected.
Oh,
So I still have my letter from the Dodgers notifying me that I'd been drafted, and they had the draft rights to me, and they would be notifying me, getting in contact with me. And it was quite an experience. But I had a good offer to go play baseball and basketball at the University of Oklahoma. So I guess they just came up a few dollars short on the bonus. And you know,
So
we were talking
what's that
about it, you know,
today in $2026?
oh, you know, you know, I just had a number in my head that's what I wanted, and what I'd seen other people signing for. And, you know, like I said, I kind of had this vision of playing at OU, and, you know, stars in my eyes. And so I went that direction, but it was quite an experience. I got drafted 3 more times by them in
Did you
supplemental
really?
drafts.
Wow.
Yeah,
They
I
must have
mean,
liked you, huh?
I don't know. I kept telling them no, because the last time I was married and had a kid, so I wasn't leaving. I wasn't going to go to Pocatello, Idaho, was where I would have been assigned the first time out, and that just
Is that
didn't
like
sound real
Class
good
D
to my
ball or
wife.
something? Class D or
yeah,
rookie
Class
ball?
D.
What was
Rookie
that?
league.
Rookie league.
Rookie league?
Rookie league in Pocatello. So decided, you know, college sounded pretty good. Had a girlfriend. You know, they warned me, stay away from 3 things: drugs, cars, and women. I stayed away from 2, but the third one got me.
2 out of 3 is not bad.
Yeah, John, your story reminded me, because as a kid, we would go up to the old Kansas City Stadium with the Kansas City Athletics,
Mhm.
and they had the same thing. They had to go through on the left field side behind third base.
Right.
They would put up a chain link fence, temporary, because that was one of the entrances. And as a kid, we would stand there. All of my balls that I have assigned, and all the ones that I have, are from there. I even had a broken bat from Pete Runnels
Oh,
that he got. I mean, walking up after the game, they're same thing. Had to walk through not through the crowd, because they had the fence up. But
Right.
they were great. The players then were great. I mean, I've got a ball that I really cherish, because it's got Casey Stengel and
Oh.
Ralph Houck signed right over each other. Casey
Wow.
Stengel's on top, and the
Good
next
night.
manager, Ralph Houck, is signed right below him.
Man.
And I mean, I've got one really good Yankee baseball, and then I've got Boston and a couple of others. But it was like, I'm 6 years old, 7 years old. I
Mhm.
mean, at that time, Kansas City was kind of the farm club for the Yankees anyway.
Yeah.
I
Well,
mean,
Roger
I mean,
Maris was on that team early on,
Yeah,
wasn't he?
yeah.
well, when I was there, I mean, like Bob Serve, nobody remembers Bob
Yeah, I
Serve.
remember
yeah,
Bob
Bob.
Serve, yeah.
4 home runs in one game when I was there. I mean, he
Good
set the
night.
record, first guy to do it. They've been several do it since then, but it was, you know, they were just, and he got signed by the Yankees 2 years later. So you know,
Right.
but it was a neat experience, because you're right there. You could touch them, you could shake their hands, and they were great.
And
Yeah,
they
back
all
back
cared
then, it
about
was
it.
just a different world.
Yeah,
That
yeah.
reminds me of a story, back in the '70s, my brother lived out in, Scottsdale, and so on, every spring break, and this is when I was working at KTXT, college radio station. Every spring break, I would go out, and cover the teams, you know, out in Arizona, and, get a lot of interviews, and then take it back and play it, you know, the next month or so over, the campus radio station at Tech. One of the best memories I ever had was, Willie McCovey was one of my all-time favorite
Oh,
players. I grew
yeah.
up a Giants fan with Mays,
Stretch.
McCovey, Marichal. I contacted the Giants, and I asked, could I set up an interview with, Willie McCovey? Now, this is when, he had left the Giants at one time, had played for the A's for a very short time, and came back to the Giants and then retired. And so, you talk about a memory. This is like, say 8:30 or 9 in the morning
Hmm.
at Phoenix Stadium, and nobody's there except Willie McCovey and I sitting
Huh.
in the dugout, and we sat and talked for an hour and a half with one of my
Amazing.
all-time, you know, idols in Major League Baseball. That's the kind of stuff that you just can't do today, Bo. They just won't let you do those kind of things.
They'd cut you. Their agent would come in and cut you off in 5 minutes.
Now, Kevin, did you have any experience interviewing Major League players? While
here is an experience I had that you couldn't do today. Okay, when I was a kid, and I'm going to say around 12, 13 years old, I went to Willis Reed's basketball camp, which was upstate New York. Now, keep in mind, this was before those guys made the big money that they're making now. So to put on a camp and, get some thousands of dollars from the camp at the time was a big deal. Well, I go to Willis Reed's basketball camp. Well, Willis Reed, Bill Bradley, Walt Frazier.
Sweet.
Bob Lanier. Bob Lanier was a senior at St. Bonaventure then. They're all working the camp, and here we are. There's probably maybe 70, 80 kids and 10 or 12 NBA players. And,
wow.
We're getting instruction from NBA players. And, of course, at the time, we didn't realize, what a big deal that was. But now you couldn't get near NBA players to that degree, get them working at summer camps and that kind of stuff. And, so that is an experience. I'd say that, this is gonna sound corny and maybe even silly, but one of my memories of that is you had to be bed check was like 11 o'clock, had to be in bed by 11. And I remember Willis Reed, of all people, sticks his head in our room and turns the lights on, and my eyes opened up, and I looked up at him, and Willis just says to me, "Better get some sleep, little fella. We got a big day tomorrow." And then he turned him out again. He walked out of there. And you would never get near an NBA player now like then.
No. And John, you not only played baseball at OU, you also played basketball, didn't you?
Yeah, for Bob Stevens. Go Bob Stevens, one of the first up-tempo coaches in college sports. I mean, he kind of started that trend of transition. Defense was a second thought, but get the ball and get it off the court as quick as you could. It was interesting. I mean, we had to be in shape. We trained running stadium stairs in Owen Stadium. There's 72 flights up, and there's 34 sections, and you're up and down each section, and you have to do that twice.
So you got to memorize, right?
Oh yeah, and we had leaded shoes. I mean, it was an experience coming out of high school. But it was fun. I wouldn't trade it for anything. It was an experience. I did trade it. I went on and played football at University of Central Oklahoma. But like I said, room, board, books, tuition, and $15 in laundry money. And that was it.
Oh, I think I know the answer to this question before I ask it, but I believe you were a Cardinals fan growing up.
Yes. Big Red Birds.
So who were some of your first guys that you liked on the Cardinals roster?
Well, of course, everybody loved Tim McCarver, and my grandmother took us up. My great aunt and uncle lived in Granite City, right outside of St. Louis, hometown of Dal Maxwell, by the way. And we saw Bob Gibson pitch a 1 hour and 38-minute two-hitter against the Philadelphia. That's not the first 5 innings of a major league game these days.
Yeah.
My great uncle said, "Hey, we ought to get a refund for not being out here for 2 hours or whatever."
That's not even half of a major league game now.
Amazing.
Although they've sped it up, and that's good. That it's been a better watching baseball. When they've put in some of these new rules. How about you, Tom? Who did you grow up idolizing?
Well, I idolized Brooks Robinson. He was my man. I remember I was very young at the time, but the 1970 World Series, I can remember vividly watching on a small black and white TV, Brooks diving across the third base line, making those magical plays and winning the pennant for Baltimore and winning the World Series against the Reds. The early part of the Big Red Machine, really, in the later on in the 1970s. But I fell in love with following Brooks Robinson and the Orioles. I had a quick story about the Orioles in the early 80s. If you guys know anything about Eddie Murray, Eddie Murray did not talk to the press. He would not talk to the media ever. When he gave his Hall of Fame speech was the first time any of them had heard him talk. And but I got the great fortune. I was about 14, 15 years old, something like that, in the early 80s, and I think it was 83. The year the Orioles won the World Series. I was in Detroit. My dad grew up in Detroit, and I would go spend time up in Detroit. And I was up there and was hanging over the rails, being a foolish teenager, yelling at Jim Price, who was doing the announcing for the Tigers. And I mentioned that he had come in the late 60s to come see my uncle before he passed away in the hospital. He was a kid, and he had cancer. And when I said his name, he stopped and he came over and he let me onto the field. And I went on the field, and the Tigers were playing the Orioles that day. And he was like, "Hey, I'll go introduce you to whoever you'd like." And of course, I was an Orioles fan and I was a stupid kid. I should have said somebody on the Tigers, since he was the Tigers announcer. But I was like, I want to see the Orioles, And he's like, and he actually took me over and he got me into the Orioles dugout. And I sat down, and here comes this giant of a man. Eddie Murray comes and sits down next to me, and he just starts talking to me like we're long lost pals. He was the nicest man, and he put his arm around me. I remember it like it was yesterday. Put his arm around me, and he points out at third base. You see that kid out there on third base? Said he's going to be really, really good. You know who he was pointing to? It's Cal Ripken.
Nice.
That was fun.
That's one of the amazing things, just like the McCovey thing, that you can't do that these days.
No.
And I'm not sure when it changed, but obviously when I was covering spring training, back in the 70s, it wasn't that way. But you're right, Bo. Nowadays, these players are walking around half the time with their agents.
Oh, you remember Alex Rodriguez was like literally the golden child when the Rangers. We were presenting an award on behalf of society from her, and a security guy came in there and said, "You guys clear this." We were just standing up on the top of the dugout, getting ready. The guy said, "Clear the area. A-Rod wants to come." He's like, "Gosh, was this the president of the United States?" I swear, it's like, it's just got they're not the people's choice anymore.
Major League Baseball is upon us, and we can go over all the prognostications and who looks to be some of the leading contenders in each division. But that's for we can get to that down the line. Obviously, we all follow different baseball clubs. Kevin, boy, the Mets have gone through about 4 versions in the last 2 years. They signed Verlander and they signed DeGrom, and then that didn't work out. So mid-season they blew that up, but yet they seem to be competitive every year. And now they've got Juan Soto, and they think that they're going to be challenging this year. I hate to even ask this question to Coach K. What are the Rockies? How are they looking? With a groan.
No, man, that's the big question mark, black mark, whatever you want to say, because last year the worst team in Major League Baseball. I mean, they were the Keystone Cops personified, and I don't think it's getting a lot better this year. They didn't make very many off-season trades. They lost some of their better players. I mean, management needs to do some real soul searching as to whether they need to stay there or not, because it's not even a competitive program anymore. Kind of an embarrassment to Denver.
You probably know more about this, Bo. Didn't they just come out? Didn't the Major League Baseball owners? They're going to have to pony up now. They haven't they set a minimum now that's way above even some of the present payrolls. I mean, like the Pirates. I want to say the floor that they set set is like $160 million. And now the Pirates, who are at 80, are just going to have to spend a bunch of money. And all these owners that have been sitting on their butts, just raking in the money, and they're going to have to go out and spend some money. Do you know a lot about that, Bo?
They really are. I'm like you. It's $150, $160 million. And right at the moment, too, these teams are all losing their regional television. As you guys are aware, you put Band-Aids on the situation with their television contracts.
Well, it was the Rangers that really were having problems, and I think the Pirates, the Astros actually are way ahead of the game. They set up their own network. It's called Space City Home Network, and
yes,
they started last year, and so they've teamed up with the Astros and the Rockets to create their own channel. But didn't the Rangers in the middle of last year suddenly find themselves without an outlet, and they had to go back over the air or something?
Right. They went to a thing called Victory Sports, and we're on 2 UHF stations over here. But it really, it's
amazing. I think I saw an article that said if you wanted to watch every baseball game this year, you'd have to subscribe to like 6 different outlets, and it would cost you, thousands of dollars. I think that the one thing, the fans have reached a point of saturation on what they're willing to pay for. And so I think there's going to be a complete reorganization. I actually think that where we may be headed back to is over-the-air networks on a lot of this product.
I wouldn't be surprised, like you said, whatever you can find with little, small, not very wide coverage or whatever. And then, and the Atlanta Braves kind of set everything, really tore up the whole system when they came up with the Superstation. I mean, you could get the Braves games. You could get, 162 Braves games a year with just your basic cable or some sort of a option now. Like
that's
you're
right,
saying,
the
it's very difficult.
They get away with those.
The Cubs did it with WGN, I believe.
WGN with the Cubs and TBS with the Braves. I mean,
and
we're going way back.
We're
probably talking about stuff now that our viewers have no idea what we're talking about.
The dinosaurs are roaming the earth again.
All right, let's shift, take a look at college basketball. Evan, you hit it right on the head last week when you said Texas Tech, watching Texas Tech basketball was
the fever chart of a malaria victim.
And they did it again this week, didn't they?
Well, it's unbelievable how much they've come on right after losing their leading scorer and their best player. And boy, I got a feeling that coach up there knows what he's doing. Because, they're pretty sharp. For example, the Iowa State game was nowhere near as close as the final score indicated.
No, they were up by 16 most of the game.
Yeah, they were up by a ton and whatnot. So we'll see if they're just hot. Of course, they still have a few more tough games before the conference tournament starts. So we'll see on a lot of things. But, college basketball, there is so much talent in college basketball these days. It's almost scary because when I'm channel surfing, you can watch teams from all over the country that appear to have the talent to be able to get to the Final Four. And, I'm almost wondering if 25, 30 teams, if they get hot, could get to the Final Four.
Yeah.
It's like Tech. I mean, I think Tech could go to the Final Four, and Tech could also get eliminated in the first round.
Yeah, so I think that too.
It's just amazing. John, what are some of the teams that have caught your eye this season? Do you watch a whole lot of college basketball?
I watch a little. The teams right now that seem to be, on television a lot. Duke, Michigan. Seem to be, I can turn it on almost anytime I catch one of their games. And so, but, I agree with, Tom, there's just so many, and Kevin, there are so many teams right now that have unbelievable players, especially since we've really gone into the international market, bringing players from all over the world that have had vast experience with clubs and organizations. The talent level is at a whole different stratosphere right now. I think there's going to be probably 2, 3, 4 Cinderella teams come out of this whole thing this year because it's so even. Anybody on a given night can embarrass somebody else.
Well, the depth, I think, Kevin, when I look at Texas Tech in particular, they're doing it with really 7 players, almost 6, quite honestly. And it seems to me that if there's any type of foul trouble, that's how you're going to beat Texas Tech is to take the ball to the hole and get the big guys to foul out early. I know every team's got a core of their group, but it seems like the big hurdle for Texas Tech, and I don't know if for any other teams, is their depth. There's just not a lot of other players that come off the bench.
Coach, and speaking of college basketball, what a unique story that was out at USC the other night when we had a player just walk off the court and quit.
I mean, it was unbelievable. Their leading scorer, and I can't remember his name, but he drew a hard foul, went to the bench, stood there for a second, walked the length down to the end line, sat down next to a really good-looking girl, and just sat there with his arms crossed and refused to play. And that was it. He's gone. He's done.
He's 26.
Yeah, 20. Yeah, he's old. They said you wouldn't expect this on a maturity level, but you just don't, at least not in my memory, see somebody do something like that. It just,
He had played at 2 or 3 different schools. He had
Yeah.
also gotten kicked off the team, I believe, at San Diego State. So now he's kicked off the team at USC. I think his career is pretty much over. I don't see him getting a chance in the NBA. That is one of the most. That is one of the stranger things that you'll see. I think in college. Yeah, I can understand it though. I think at his age, he just got tired of playing, and if he didn't really see any future in the playing, I guess he just decided to quit. It happens, I guess.
He was having success. I don't, to me, that doesn't make sense. If if you're struggling and not doing well, I can see giving up and maybe saying, okay, this isn't for me.
But I think the whole key is doing it in the middle of a game. That's
it was unbelievable.
It.
I mean,
That's what's bizarre. Maybe after the game, he comes out and says, I'm done. That was my last game or whatever. But in the middle of a game, it was just really strange.
It was. When I saw that, I just kind of shook my head like, college athletics is kind of in trouble right now. So maybe just too many prima donnas. But I don't know. That one was weird.
Joining us now is Mark Johnson. You might remember we were joined by Mark a few weeks ago prior to the AT&T Pro-Am out at Pebble Beach. Mark, I just want to get your feelings on the pulse of what's going on after visiting, with some of the people out at Pebble Beach. How does it stand now with the LIV tournament and the PGA?
Well, I think they're really at an impasse, quite frankly, John. I don't think that anything's going to change per se for a while. Nothing that I can see. I think there's individual issues with certain players. I know that John Rahm is having real difficulty with his relationship with them and the DP World Tour. But, a lot of the guys who have suddenly started migrating back to the PGA Tour, that's their preferred environment. They whether they actively went over and to make a cash grab, or they're just upset by a lot of the rules of the LIV, and changing rules of the LIV, I think is more appropriate. I think those are some isolated circumstances. Even with a new head of the PGA, I just don't see anything significantly changing with the two of them for a while. I had thought for a while they might, figure out a way to peacefully coexist, but nothing in that I'm seeing is indicating any difference to me. The one thing I did find that was interesting is that I've been concerned about, even with that tournament in particular being made a signature event, that, it was just, they hadn't had the gate of local spectators come back out to see that tournament like they had before when it was a full Crosby Clambake style, and that changed this year. There definitely were more people out there just to see good PGA Tour players, of which there is a better field now. So that was encouraging. And but I don't see I don't see anything on the horizon that shows that, okay, we're ready to combine or peacefully coexist and have guys move in between the two environments. I don't see anything on the horizon of that changing.
Well, how is this conflict in the Middle East going to affect them? I mean, I don't know that I would be wanting to be out on the 18th green when there are cruise missiles flying by.
Well, I think more than anything else, it's I wouldn't put it past the Iranians to be thinking of trying to find opportunities to go after Americans in any situation. And if there are American players constantly playing in live tournaments, I'd want to be rethinking that right now, because regardless
No
of what the
kidding.
president says, this is going to go on for a while.
Yeah, and I
Well,
think it's going to affect the World Cup too.
Yeah.
because Iran is
yeah, I was
supposed to
just
play
going to bring
here.
that up. I mean,
Yeah.
we'll have a special guest in the next couple of weeks. Good friend of mine who has broadcast about 5 World Cups, Jorge Perez Navarro. But what about the World Cup? I mean, we're in the starting the World Baseball Classic. That's not really going to be affected, but the World Cup is a different animal.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I think that, it's interesting, the World Cup and, 2028's not too far away. I guarantee you the LA Olympic Committee is already looking at this and how they're going to have to prepare for it. I saw an article that came out. I get a chance to read it about how the administration was going to talk about
Gesundheit.
something. They were going to talk about something that, in terms of information of what they wanted to disclose to the general public about what they were expecting in terms of any homegrown or imported terror activities starting to hit in the cities. I can guarantee you I'm not going to be spending much time around San Francisco for a while because, San Francisco, LA, New York, whether it's for sporting events or anything else, I just don't think it's going to be a smart place to be. I had a friend who you and I both know, John. I'm not going to mention her name, but she mentioned to my wife this morning that she was trying to figure out if she was still going to do her trip to Egypt. And I said, I don't know that the government's even going to let you go there, much less whether it's a smart thing to do, which I don't think it is if you don't have to. So, but circling back to what you originally said is I think that anything I wouldn't want to be playing any live golf tournaments for a couple of reasons. Anything that's over in that neighborhood, whether it's in Dubai or any of the Arab countries, but also just the fact that it's another example of the Saudis and the Americans doing something together, both of which the Iranian leadership hate tremendously. And so it's a perfect storm. And I would imagine a lot of the live players are thinking about that. We'll see what happens with any actual, increase in defections. It's kind of slowed down since Koepka came over and a couple of other guys came over. So.
Well, it's a shame because, we've just had the Winter Olympics, and the Olympics are a uniting, force around sport. And then to have this happen, it really brings it back to reality that, unfortunately, that's something that happens every 2 or 4 years, but it's not the rule. And obviously, we'll have Jorge on soon to talk about the ramifications of the World Cup. Now, one of the things I wanted to touch on what you said, I'm glad that you felt like Pebble Beach was a lot a bigger draw this year, but it's even going to be better next year, right? With the U.S. Open coming.
Yeah,
up.
because it's going to be they already made one big hole change that was clearly done in anticipation of the Open, which is number 6. It's the relatively short par 5 that goes right up to the cliff. It's right before the small par 3 that has got complete exposure on 3 sides of the ocean, and they moved one of the tee boxes back across an area to make it a little bit longer, a little different trajectory. I think they're trying to figure out how to move people too when there's a lot of people out on the course. there are definitely changes. That I've now worked. This will be my third U.S. Open that I've worked at Pebble Beach, and it's magical. I've never been to a golf tournament anywhere in the world like being at Pebble Beach during the U.S. Open. It's just different. Even if it's not the most challenging course anymore. There's certainly more challenging courses like Bethpage and tournaments like that also have a great spectator turnout because of all the people who come in from New York City. But it's magical, and I wouldn't miss it for the world. But people are going to start thinking. I guarantee you the USGA is already thinking about how they're going to beef up security, because that's going to be a prime. That's like that's the F1 of golf, and so they're going to have to take a lot of more precautions that they haven't even talked to us about yet.
Well, this month, looking here at the PGA schedule, I guess it's sort of the Florida month. They're playing in Puerto Rico this month, but they have the Players Championship down at Point Vedra Beach, and then they'll be playing the Valspar Championship before coming home to Houston here with the Texas Children's Open. I have to say, even playing in Florida with what's going on around the world could be dangerous.
Yeah, I mean, primarily because Trump spends half his time there. I take the Iranians seriously, that they're figuring out a way to take him out. And, I wouldn't want to be anywhere near South Florida. And because I just think they're, hey, look, I don't know really. It's so hard to tell what's going on in the country right now. But, the president even came out himself and said that his big fear is that somebody comes in there who's even worse. I don't know that that's even possible. I just think that they're all of the same extremist bent, and so it's just I wouldn't want to be at any golf tournament in South Florida, much less Florida at large.
Let's change tracks here, guys. All this week we've been watching the NFL in the Combine. Coach, have you watched it fairly closely? Who are some of the people that you think are surprises coming out of there?
It's been interesting to say the least. I mean, especially with it's kind of not a good year for quarterbacks. I mean, Mendoza, you got several other, but it's just, I don't know. It's a good year for the defense. Looking at the players right now, edge players are a premium. I think you're going to see 3 or 4 of those go in the top 10. I think Love, out there, he's probably the best player in the draft. I mean, running back from Notre Dame. He shows, extremely well. His Bryce, I think his name is Bryce, his teammate also showed well. It's just been amazing watching how these, Tom and I were talking earlier, the athletes today, they're so big and so strong and so fast. It's just unbelievable. I mean, you see a guy that's 6'7", 340 pounds, run a 4.95 40. Unheard of.
How about the lineman the other day? What, he was close to 400 pounds.
Yeah, I mean, back in my day, a guy that could run 4.5, he was a skilled person. The linemen were running 5.5, 6 flat. Now, it's just bigger. The truth is, bigger, faster, stronger, and that's what athletes across the board, be it football, basketball, baseball, it doesn't matter. They train, they do strength training, and conditioning. Golf, same thing. Golfers right now, I have a former kid who played for me in high school, basketball, Taylor Moore from Edmond. He trains constantly, physical weights, doing conditioning, stamina. It's a completely changed atmosphere anymore. The atmosphere, they're just better.
Tom, were you able to watch that closely?
I watched a little bit of it, and I know that A&M, I believe, has 13 players that went to the Combine, and I think Texas Tech had like 8 or 10 as well. And between those two programs, Coach mentioned the defensive side of the ball is strong. the edge players for Tech and for A&M are probably going to be top 10 picks. They performed very, very well. And then of course, you have the linebacker from Tech, Jacob Rodriguez, who played wonderfully well all year. We thought deserved a spot in the Heisman, at least at the announcements. But I think he's gonna surprise some people too, and maybe make some big moves. But I do agree with Coach that the defensive side of the ball overall seems to be much stronger in this draft. And I think it's kind of a shift in college football that a lot of coaches, especially these top tier programs, from the Alabamas, the Ohio States, they're figuring out that defense wins championships. I know that's cliche, and I think that's always been the case, but I think they're finding out that speed on defense really shuts down these new wave offenses.
There was one player that I was familiar with. His name was Eli Stowers. You might remember him, Tom. He started his career
as a
at
quarterback.
Texas A&M. He went out to New Mexico State, and at that point linked up with Diego Pavia and Jerry Kill, the head coach out there, and then transferred with Pavia and Coach Kill over to Vanderbilt. And think about this. He did a 45.5 vertical jump from a standing start the other day. He showed up at the combine. He had a broad jump of 11 feet 3 inches. He was 4.51 seconds in the 40. He may just as well moved himself into a first round a pick at tight end. Now, he's not your big blocking tight end, but he could certainly be an exceptionally skilled pass catcher tight end. And that's just a player, like we've talked about, that has progressed, and now with the training and the skills that they bring out in a ball player, is a typical example of somebody who you've never maybe heard of.
Well, he's a really smart kid. He started out as a quarterback at A&M, and knew the offense. He didn't get an opportunity to play very, very much. I believe was the third string quarterback. He had a handful of snaps, but what was important about him was he made the conscious decision to switch to tight end. And I think, as you've said, may have made a wise choice for himself.
Yeah. All right, guys, let's wind this up. Let's get over to scattershooting. Again, this is just something that has come into your consciousness, over your career in sports. And Kevin, what's your scattershooting moment this week?
Did anybody happen to see what Kevin Willard said about Rick Pitino? Nobody saw that?
Share it with us.
Oh, he just said the most miserable time of his life was working for Pitino, because Pitino is a hard nose who keeps you thinking every day you're going to get fired and whatnot. And I found that kind of amusing, you might say.
What about you, Tom? What's your scattershooting moment?
I'm going to go to a sport that we haven't ever talked about. I'm going to go to the PBA, and it was 14 years ago at the U.S. Open in the Professional Bowlers Association that Pete Weber, the son of the Hall of Fame bowler Dick Weber, and Pete Weber's a Hall of Famer in his own right, he won the U.S. Open, and he had that famous "Who do you think you are? I am" moment that made all the video memes. That was 14 years ago, and it's kind of resurfaced out on YouTube, and it's getting a lot of play right now. And I just find it humorous because Pete has finally retired from the PBA. He's just doing senior PBA events now. But he's a force to be reckoned with in the PBA. And I saw it and I was like, that was 14 years ago. It seems like it was yesterday to me.
All right. My scattershooting moment this week. In the last couple of weeks, it sort of struck me that the generation of ball players we grew up with are passing away in the last couple of weeks. Elroy Face, who was a famous relief pitcher for the Pittsburgh Pirates, came up with the fork ball, which is, I guess, the predecessor of the split finger fastball. He passed away. And then just a few days later, Bill Mazeroski died. Bill, famous for the Game 7 home run that beat the Yankees in 1960. And my tie to that was really the first baseball game I can ever remember. I was sitting with my granddad watching it, and I still remember him jumping out of his seat and going crazy and dancing around the room when Mazeroski hit that home run.
I loved watching the clip of that and watching Yogi Berra was playing left field at the time.
Right.
And when you watch it, you see him turn to the wall and he just kind of puts his head down like
and he sort of runs to the right. Yeah. And again, another connection that I had, I went up to Pittsburgh a few years ago, and I went out to the University of Pittsburgh, where they still have the wall that the home run went over. And right there from the old Forbes Field on the Pitt campus.
I have a ball signed by Mazeroski and Ralph Terry, the pitcher who threw the ball.
That's pretty good.
Nice.
I've got Ralph Terry.
Mark, you got any scattershooting moments?
Well, I don't know if it's a pure scattershoot moment, but I saw something earlier that made me feel really good. I've always had this soft spot for Charlie Woods, Tiger's son, just because I think it's a big shadow to always be playing in, and they overhype him when he go out and play, and usually not play very well, probably because he was too nervous as a kid. He won his state golf championship this week, and not only that, but his mother and his father were there together to celebrate with him, and no blows were exchanged, and they seem to do a great job of coming together for his sake. So I felt really good about Charlie. He's starting to step in and do his own thing, not being his dad's shadow. And the thing that did surprise me is he played for a 1A school. I figured Tiger probably would have had him in a 4A school, but no matter what it is, he won it, and kudos to Charlie.
Did I see that? Didn't he just sign a scholarship with Florida State?
Yeah, it's at one of the big Florida schools. I think you're right. I think it is Florida State. So good for him.
All right, John, you need to wrap this up. What's your scattershooting moment?
I've been thinking about it this week. The kind of it's almost a pet peeve, not a scattershoot. The number, after watching all the bowl games this year and everything, the number of celebrities that are on the sideline right now, it's just overwhelming. I mean, I can remember back when you and I were working and we did the Big 12 championship, and Bo got me a job working the field passes, and Toby Keith tried to come on the field, and I wouldn't let him because he didn't have a pass.
I remember that.
And Joe Castiglione, the AD, came back 10 minutes later and personally, hand in hand, walked him into the field. You see, McConaughey, you see all these different celebrities now that are a distraction.
Yeah.
I want to watch the football game. I don't want to watch them. I'll go to the movie theater. No, that's just a pet peeve. But I thought about it a lot this week.
I remember that because I was in the tunnel and I got Toby Keith coming back in the tunnel. And he was not happy.
He was not a happy camper.
All right. Thanks for everybody joining us this week. We'll be back 1 week from today, but this is episode 4 of Sportz-USA.com. Thanks for being with us, and we'll see you next time.
See you guys.
Everybody.
Thanks for joining us for this edition of Sportz-USA, available at our website at sportz-USA.com. And remember to click and favorite so you can join us next time on Sportz-USA.com.